Welcome back to the Truck Show Podcast. I'm your host, Holman, and it's great to be here again on another fun and informative episode. On this show, we have Cobb Tuning's Kirstin Backes in studio to talk tuning and trucks, and I have another ride in my driveway this week, so that'll be pretty fun, something different. You're either going to enjoy it or you're going to enjoy hating it, one or the other. I don't think there's any middle ground on this one. I won't tell you what was in Holman's driveway just yet. But let's just say I spent a ton of time sitting around parking lots this week, waiting some more. The good news is I had plenty of time to check in on the Podshed Insiders group on Facebook, and it was awesome to see all the great interaction going on with our top fans. Pretty amazing. You guys are sharing so much stuff. I've gotten show ideas. I've gotten feedback on the shows. You guys are talking to each other. Asking questions about different products, some stuff even off topic, just because you know other truck guys love that stuff. Sharing your rides, your new rides, your old rides, what you're driving today, your projects. If you have not joined the Podshed Insiders group on Facebook, you got to do it now, because if you love the Truck Show Podcast, it is the best place to be to feel like you're in the midst of everything. And I thought when I put it together, it would be something cool, right? A way for all of us to stay engaged and talk about the podcast. You guys are taking it to a different level. So I really appreciate that. It's so awesome to see. Anyway, we're also going to do something we haven't done in a while, and that's check in on the 5-star hotline. I checked, and we've got some messages, so we'll do that today. But first, we need to thank the companies that make the Truck Show Podcast possible. The Truck Show Podcast is presented by Nissan. Looking for a new pickup truck or family hauler? It's time to replace whatever's sitting in your driveway? Then you'll want to head on down to your local Nissan dealership and put your eyes on the robust and reliable Freshen 25 Nissan Frontier pickup. And in fact, even our listener Chris Spicer posted on the Podshed Insiders that he just traded in his Ford Ranger Tremor on a 2025 Nissan Frontier Long Bed Pro 4X, and he's loving it. I love that you guys are supporting the show and taking a look at the recommendations we have. But if you're not a pickup person, you can also check out the new luxurious and capable 25 Nissan Armada full-size SUV. Either way, I think you'll be impressed that Nissan's legendary ruggedness comes with all the features you'd expect, such as incredibly comfortable zero-gravity seats, modern styling inside and out, available off-road packages, or even audio systems like the Fender audio system that Chris Spicer loves in his brand new Frontier, all for a price point that feels like a deal. Point your browser to nissanusa.com and see how Nissan has the perfect quality-built vehicle to fit your needs. Now, I know you guys love your trucks as much as we do, so if you love it as much as we do, I know that you want to give it the best. And by giving it the best, that means getting the best synthetics money can buy. AMSOIL is not only the leader in synthetics, but also the first in synthetics. Started by fighter pilot Al Amatuzio in 1972 with game-changing 10W40 synthetic motor oil, AMSOIL continues to innovate with a wide selection of synthetics that are formulated, blended, and packaged right here in the United States. Available for just about any application, including automotive, motorcycles, power sports, industrial, racing, small engine, high mileage, and anything else with an engine. Whether you need oil, lube, grease, transmission fluid, even car care products, or oil filters and oil change kits, you will find everything you need at amsoil.com. You'll also experience a vast catalog of products and quick shipping. Thanks to our generous partnership with Kershaw Knives, Truck Show Podcast listeners can get one of the best knife deals you'll find. You can get up to 40% off MSRP and free shipping over $50 by using the code 25TSP40 at checkout. It can be used more than once and even includes automatics. All Kershaw knives, regardless of price point, come with a limited lifetime warranty and repair parts such as pocket clips, screws, springs, all that stuff. Available through the website. Kershaw Knives also includes lifetime sharpening, and the lineup has everything from EDC knives that can be used and abused for under $50 all the way up to high-end collectibles. Personally, I'm in love with the Iridium and the Bel Air. Those are my two favorite knives from Kershaw right now. Support the Truck Show Podcast and get yourself a Kershaw knife just like the ones I'm carrying today. And when it comes to amazing adventure content, how-tos, and great storytelling, only one brand is doing it right in the print magazine space, and that's OVR, Outdoor Vehicle Recreation. OVR is about getting out there in our vehicles to explore and discover the world around us. Get complimentary access for a year to the digital library or discount on your print subscription today at OVRmag.com. Use the promotional code at Truck Show Podcast. And if you're looking for a deal from our guests and sponsors, or you forgot what the codes are, head over to truckshowpodcast.com to our featured products page, and we've got everything listed right there for you. The Truck Show Podcast survives off your reviews and sponsorships. Please help me to keep it free by leaving reviews and comments on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and by supporting our sponsors.
The Truck Show. We're gonna show you what we know. We're gonna answer what the truck, 'cause truck rhymes with the Truck Show. We have the lifted, we have the lowered, and the Truck Show. Oh, oh.
It's the Truck Show with your host, Holman.
That's right. That's me. I am your host, Holman, and this is the Truck Show podcast, and I'm happy to have you guys here for yet another great episode. On this episode, I actually had a guest in studio. It wasn't over Zoom or over the telephone, which is pretty cool. So that would be Kirstin Backes from Cobb Tuning. So she came out to California from Tennessee, went out to King of the Hammers and had some business out here. And we've been trying to set up some time for Cobb to come in for a while. And she said, hey, why don't I just come in studio this week if you're available? So I said, yeah, let's do that. So she came on and we had a bunch of fun. Had a really nice conversation about tuning. There's a few things in there that I was even surprised about. Some things that I learned. I think you'll be interested in that as well. So here's the interview with Kirstin Backes. Let's get into it. So my guest today on the Truck Show podcast is a good friend of mine, Kirstin Backes from a little company called Cobb Tuning. How's it going? Welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
You know, we can't have you without a jingle, so we got to do the jingle first.
All right, let's hear it.
All right, I think I know which one we're going to do. So I know, you should be scared because everybody gets a jingle. But here's the thing. I banned this while Lightning was here because it was about 45 minutes long, and we haven't played it in so long. I'm just feeling it right now. So
No Rules Pod.
All right, here we go.
The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show, vroom, vroom. The Truck Show, the Truck Show. It's time for the inside job. The inside, the inside, the inside job. We'll talk to an industry expert about how things work. The inside job is on now. All of our guests, they have the know-how. On the Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show. Vroom, 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 vroom. The inside job.
Well,
I think it's a great way to torture someone who might be nervous about recording.
are you going to tell us how things work?
I will vroom, 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 tell you how things work.
So lucky for you, we're out of time now.
All right. Well, hey,
So it was
it's been great being
awesome.
here.
It
I'll
was-
see you out at the lake then.
No, I got back from late bed. I'm not going back. I'm not. You still have to go.
I still got to go.
I'm not going. Oh
Some
man,
events.
the lake bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a complete and utter crazy. I won't say it was a disaster because it was really well run, as much as you can run when you turn 100,000 people loose.
Yeah,
And
in
just
a public space.
In a public space and go, hey, here's this punch bowl. Like, just don't kill each other.
Right.
So,
Right.
anyway, all right. So, Cobb Tuning, you and I have been talking about getting you on the show for about 7-8 years now.
Yeah, at least a decade.
So I'm glad that you're finally here. So welcome to the Pod Shed, and I have to ask you the same question that I ask all of our guests, and that is, what do you think?
I love it. I love the build on it. I need one of my own. Not for podcasting. I'm counting myself out of that. No more podcasts.
I've decided that if the podcast goes south, I'm turning this into a cigar and whiskey lounge and a speakeasy.
Have you considered building a second shed?
I actually have considered building a second shed. But for now, fortunately, the podcast is still alive and well, so I'm going to keep it as a podcast studio for now.
Good plan.
All right, so Cobb Tuning. Cobb Tuning has been known for a long time, really pervasive in the import space.
Yeah.
Really big around Subarus and some JDM stuff. But in the past year and a half, you really have made a big push into trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, so Cobb started out actually just over 25 years ago. So the tail end of 24 was our 25th year in business.
That's hard to believe.
I know. And Trey started the company way back when, sending floppy disks back and forth across the country to do with tuning. And that seems so foreign in today's day and age.
There was somebody the other day, I was watching Instagram, and there was a reel, and it was somebody putting in like the floppy disk, like the big one, to load a game of Doom or something.
Yeah.
They're like, this is the best sound ever. Like, this is ASMR for my childhood.
It's just chomping technology.
And then you hear it like slide and you lock the little door and everything.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? You're like, yeah, I've got a blah, blah, blah car, and you got something for that? Oh, yeah, I'm going to send you a floppy disk.
Right. And they were tuning imports that you couldn't even get your hands on. So you have the top of the line thing for whatever the thing is that you're working on in that moment, an STI or whatever.
Sure.
And then you're utilizing technology that is a decade behind. It's crazy.
Well, and then you go to the website today, so cobbtuning.com, and one thing I noticed, and this has been a major shift in the tuning industry in probably only the past maybe 5 years, but you guys also offer OS X now. It's not just a Windows machine based for you to load, and that's huge. So I literally, and I'm going to prove it to you, have this spare laptop, and it's
the tuning laptop.
It's my tuning laptop.
Yeah.
It's like $399 at Best Buy.
Yeah.
And I literally,
which means the processing speed really gets you.
Oh, it sucks.
Quick.
Yeah, but I bought it a few years ago when I had the supercharger on my 20 Wrangler.
Yep.
Because there was no way for me to load the files and do all the stuff with some of your competitor software.
Yep.
So I had to buy a computer so that I could access that. And that's the only, like, I'm a hardcore Apple user. I do Mac for everything. I have a MacBook Pro for the podcast and my work and my video. I do everything on my MacBook Pro. And that is just for tuning. And so when I went on the website and was kind of doing a little recon, I'm like, oh, wow, how nice of them. They have OS X.
And that's not something that you see even across the tuning industry today. So I, even up to a couple of years ago, was dual booting a MacBook Air to be able to tune on my Mustang.
Yeah.
And that is an atrocious process. It absolutely destroyed the computer. So, it's a huge advantage.
Were you using like Parallels or something like that?
I don't even remember what it was, but it was a painful process that I got through only by following a step-by-step on Reddit, which, is the only way to get the best step-by-step.
Oh, totally. Reddit all day.
Yeah.
So it's nice for us Mac users and creative types who also happen to be car people that you can interact through OS X app as well. So that's cool. But not to derail you too far, let's get on to trucks here for a minute.
Yeah, so Cobb got into the tuning space starting with the 2017 F-150s and Raptors. As soon as we got into the Gen 2 Raptor, we saw really good headway. We joke internally that one of our major support platforms is Porsche, and that the Venn diagram of Porsche owners and Raptor owners is just a circle.
Oh, seriously?
So the pickup was super easy from one to the other. And we've seen really good success in that space and really happy customers. And they love the functionality that we're bringing to the space to be able to adjust for things like, as an example, we took the Cobb Gen 3 to Baja last year. And when everyone else is hunting for octane booster in a semi-sketchy gas station in the middle.
There's no way Baja has sketchy
nowhere.
octane numbers. I've never had that problem before.
Right.
And everybody, by the way, everybody down there is like, oh, I'm bringing my supercharged or turbo trophy, pre-runner, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I hope you have like gallons of octane booster in the back too.
Octane, who needs it?
Yeah.
Right? And I was able to, when I could only get 87, I was able to switch the tune out and just run 87. So it's going to run a little down on power.
Yeah.
But even the best octane booster, when you don't know what you're boosting on top of, is questionable.
Well, and some of them, they're not as potent as they say they are. And some of them also are bad for cats.
Yep.
And some of the other things in the engine.
I'm very particular about that.
So you have to be really careful about what you're buying, and 400 octane. No, you're really at best. And besides, most of the time you're not going to have a full tank anyway. And who knows what you're mixing in, and there's no way to know like what the ratio is. But you're probably at best maybe 2 points of octane, maybe a little bit more.
So there are some that you can certainly hit more, and do that reliably. But they're few and far between.
And they're expensive.
And I mean, here's something that I would challenge anyone listening to this to, is if you don't understand the science behind the thing that you're doing, maybe it's the wrong boof, right?
I feel triggered. The podcast, I've taken all this over on my own, and are you trying to tell me something?
I was just supposed to tell you how to work. But that is, I think, if you don't know what octane is, maybe don't go into adjusting it.
Yeah,
and I say
how
that
it
as
works.
someone who only very recently learned, so it's not an attack.
So you're like, I know.
Yeah.
So I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm octane certified.
That's right. It's one thing to understand what it does. To understand what it is and how it gets you there is a different mind-melting conversation.
Now, how long on a modern vehicle does it take to swap in and out of a tune? Is it a long process? Is it hot swappable? Is it
So it depends. It depends on the vehicle. Typically, we see flash times in the 5 to 10 minute range.
Okay.
It just really depends. If it's the first flash where you're flashing every single table for the first run, it's going to be a little bit more labor intensive on the computer and on the access port, which is the tuner that we use. But for the most part, if you're flashing back and forth between, octane grades or fuel grades, that happens so quickly. I mean,
you could do it at a fuel stop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So at a slow pump in Baja, I can
Never
switch
had that
the
problem
tune
either.
out. I can switch the tune out before the fuel is full.
So what are your biggest truck applications right now that you're working on? Because I know it's a growth area for the company.
Yeah.
In fact, it's such a growth area that you're like the truck marketing person, right?
Yeah, not just marketing, sales and marketing. So,
look at
and
you.
I actually just as of a couple of weeks ago took on product ownership for all of Ford, and this is kind of the secret drop, I guess, all of Toyota. So we
wow.
are getting ready to launch Toyota tuning products.
All right, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yep.
So let's get the elephant in the room out of the way,
Okay.
and that's sort of the emissions side of the business.
Yep.
And there have been a lot of companies. You may have experienced some of this yourself.
I've heard about it.
Where emissions has been a problem.
Yeah.
And so what are we looking at? What's the current landscape? Where is Cobb in that whole process now? And then how has it changed with the new administration? Is that looking, I mean, because you're involved with SEMA as well.
Yeah.
So you basically kind of have more of a pulse than the average bear on kind of what's happening and coming down the pike.
Yeah, sure. So the big thing with Cobb is that we wrapped up our consent decree back a few months ago. We are operating totally on the up and up. Anything that you can purchase from us has been legal for quite some time. We've just, crossed the T's and dotted the I's. And almost everything that we manufacture is actually 50 state legal, meaning that it's carrying a CARB EO, which is an extra step that, arguably you don't have.
Here's what I'll say about that.
Yeah.
When I talk to people and they ask about tunes, I always tell them if you're on the fence between a carb tune and a non-carb tune, do the carb tune, whether you live in California or not, because it had to go through an extra set of basically of being proven.
Yeah, it's validation.
And on top of that, they don't allow any check engine lights or codes at all.
Right.
So you may not know, or you may know, a lot of vehicles have in the OBD2, you plug in a scanner. And there's a couple different kinds of codes. Ones that are kind of the sticky codes. Those are the ones that illuminate your check engine light or your MIL. The other ones are stored codes that maybe haven't risen to that level, but the engine's like, hey, at this time something funky happened and I'm just going to put this in the background. Yeah. And you can find those stored codes. Well, in the CARB process, you can't have any codes.
That's right.
Like there's nothing. So
that's right. If
you're really particular about your vehicle and you want to make sure that it is as fine-tuned as possible when you're going in there, a CARB tune is almost always, unless it's a company that puts in the extra effort and says, we don't need the validation, but we're going, it's kind of like building the pod shed.
Yep.
You may have built it to code, perhaps, but maybe you didn't get the full permit. I'm as an example.
Yeah.
But so there may be people out there. I'm just saying if you have the choice between two, typically, generally, broad strokes, having that CARB EO is a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there are so many jurisdictions, whether they're in the state of California or not, that have adopted CARB's rules as their rules, right? So you know that you are meeting those rules regardless of where you live and whether or not you actually need that EO number. I also know as a former resident of the state of California that rolling smog checks are a thing, right? And I know the terror when you are turning around a corner and you're think,
like,
uh-oh, that's not a DUI checkpoint.
Are we going to be held accountable for all the crazy things we say?
Or do?
I really hope not.
Yeah.
But at this point, yeah.
You don't want to be that guy. Nobody wants to be that guy.
If you're buying with Cobb, you know that you're getting everything's on the up and up. So we're proud to be there. I mean, we at this point are carrying over 200 EOs, which is
wow.
I mean, so far and away beyond anybody else. So it's been a labor of love, and we have some really killer people inside that are doing the engineering, the calibrating, and actually we have one guy that all he does is CARB EO work.
So what's really even possible? What's left on the table? Because when you look at a manufacturer, the whole aftermarket is predicated on the manufacturers building a vehicle for the lowest common denominator, right? The entire thing. we have to be good and hot. We have to be good and cold. We have to be good at altitude. We have to be good at sea level. We have to hit this price point. We have to do this. We have to do that. So with emissions, with power, fuel economy, efficiency, all the things that go into a modern engine, it's not like it was 20 years ago where intake exhaust filter could get you, 10%, and then a tune can get you another, 5 to 10 on top of that. What's on the table? What's the reason for getting a tune today?
So I think there's really a few reasons you could jump into it. So one is you've got a stock vehicle. You just want to see what it's capable of. So with an off-the-shelf tune, what's going to come preloaded on our devices, you're going to see a healthy bump from stock. If you take that same device and your vehicle and you go get it professionally dyno tuned, you're going to see another step beyond that, because that comes down to that common denominator factor again, right? We have to make sure that our tunes leaving our facility are conservative enough that they're meeting not only all the emission standards and all of that, but also that if there's any weird variability in vehicles, that we're not going to go outside the bounds and cause a problem.
Yeah. So you're leaving a little bit of overhead there.
Yeah.
Just in case there's a weird spike of something.
That's right.
Or
we're not watching your truck's wideband and knowing what's happening when you're actually putting it under load. So there's that use case. There are all kinds of other options. If you are towing with your truck and you want to get more low range in there so that when you are, not towing headed into Johnson Valley with a trailer behind you, that you can still make good power and keep trucking up a hill, right? So sometimes, especially with a gas truck, that can be a real, it's a struggle fest.
Well, especially on like some of the ones that are non-turbo or non-supercharged, Ram Hemi, for example.
Yeah.
Hemi is kind of a really peaky engine compared to other engines out there where the power band's kind of high on it. But then you start getting under load with a trailer and you have to watch your temps and you're climbing 100 degrees up the Cajon Pass and you've got your 30-foot trailer on the back and it can do it, but you have to stay on top of it and you're probably not going to be hammered down, right?
Yeah. So you have that use case. You have all-out power, right? So if you're tuning for separate modifications, which might be intake, exhaust, intercooler, et cetera, and we can do the same kind of deal where we've got off-the-shelf cowls for that, but we also, would then recommend if you're looking for max power, take it to a tuner. One of the things that I'm really angling towards on the truck side this year is what I'm calling tentatively our overland tuning. So that's going to be designed for people who are loading up all their camping gear. They're loading up coolers. They're loading up all of their...
I don't know these people that you speak of.
I've never met a single one of them.
Never met an overloader.
Yeah, right. Even if you're not an overloader, right? If you've got, you could be well within the payload of your vehicle, and God, I hope you are. But
none of us are, by the way.
people don't know how payload works.
No, they don't.
But if you're kind of pushing that, and you're carrying water, and you're carrying food, and you're carrying all your camping gear, and you're still trying to make fuel economy because you're going to be out in desolate no man's land.
Yeah,
for
I
3
still
days.
need, loaded down in 4 high.
Yeah.
I still need 200 miles to a tank or something like that, right?
Right. So that kind of tuning, which is going to be a weird cross between an eco and a performance, right? It's going to live in kind of a weird space, and hopefully that's something that we can roll out to the masses here shortly. My hope is that comes out with the Tacoma here shortly.
They don't need that or any throttle pedal sensitivity improvements at all. They're perfectly fine how they come, especially the last generation. Yeah, they're just wonderful.
I've been getting used to it, right? So I'm finally driving one of the brand new hybrid Tacomas, and I do love it. I do love that hybrid. I know people have weird feelings about hybrid trucks, but torque is a real thing, and personally, I think if you're going to go play in the sand, it's pretty nice to have it.
Those are losers, baby.
I don't know.
I don't want nothing to do with those.
I mean, that's a good place to kind of jump off to, right? Is hybrid trucks. They're becoming a lot more prevalent. Not quite the norm, but you've got the F-150 EcoBoost hybrid. You've got the Toyota Tundra hybrids. You've got the Toyota Tacoma hybrids. So there are vehicles out there. What can you really do with a modern hybrid? Because a lot of times they're using the hybrid power plant or the electrical side as torque fill.
Yeah.
Right. So if you do have an engine that has peaky power, it's going to fill in the torque. A lot of the Ram e-torques will do that, and the traditional hybrids do as well. But they also add almost like a turbo boost, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. Like they will add an additive drivetrain to the
especially
gas
the plug-in
engine.
guys.
Yeah. So what is available? Like, what does a hybrid tune do? What does it look like? What actual parameters do you have access to?
So technology today that is available to the public is tuning that gas motor anyway. Sorry, gas engine. Not
Yes,
gas motor.
gas engine.
I don't want to hear it. But if you've got the ability to do computer engineering, which like at its core, that's what Cobb Tuning is, right? We are a software company. If we can manipulate software that operates a vehicle, there is ostensibly no reason why we should not be able to operate technology aimed at that motor. And I think that that's kind of the next frontier.
Do you think that is going to weed out some people? Do you think that's going to be like that next acumen of the people who have staying power in the industry are going to be the tuners that know how their way around the hybrid powertrains?
Yeah. I think if it's not the way to stay around, it's the only way forward, right? Because even if, all of the EPA changes that might be coming, whatever that looks like, there are so many hybrids out there now, and there are so many electric cars even that are fun and fast and like wild to drive, right? You can get what is it, the Plaid Tesla,
yeah, which is
right?
ridiculous. I've got that Hummer out there that has 1,000 pound-feet of torque, and in the watts to freedom mode, it does 0 to 60 in like 3.2 seconds.
You're
and
not
it's
buying
wild
that if you're not an enthusiast, right? Like it's electric. There's all these other hybrid variants on things, but the power that they can make, even if it's not, horsepower and what it is, that is such a riot to drive. So they've got their weird hangups, and people are going to have their weird hangups around them. But I think that really that's kind of the next big exciting thing to me. I mean, we can do power adders all day, and I drive a supercharged truck, right? Like I get it.
Yeah.
But if something's a fun time to drive, I mean, that's what we're all doing here, right? We're all in the business of fun cars.
Yeah. I mean,
and trucks.
I'll be honest. I was in the camp of like, screw you and your EVs. But what I realized, I wasn't really mad at the EVs.
Yeah.
I was mad that somebody wanted to force me into it, and they weren't going to let me make my decision. So I've got the Nissan Ariya out there. I love it. It's the greatest around town car. It's everything I want it to be and more. My wife's plug-in Mazda went to the dealer today for service. She had the Ariya all day because I had the Hummer. She's like, this car's so nice. It's solid. It rides so smooth. She goes, you can't even feel the shifts. I'm like, well, it doesn't have gears, so it's probably why.
Yeah.
But was hardcore. I don't want anything electric, and she's starting to. For the right use case, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I even took the Hummer out to KOH.
Yeah.
So I got a full charge. Went out there. It's got 300 miles of range. I did some off-roading out there.
What's the driving situation? Is it a little like turrety?
I mean, it's not as bad as the original.
Okay.
But I kind of had a little bit of a love for the original because I used to race them, and we were tight with Hummer at the time, and so we got to do a lot of early stuff with them. It's fine. The thing that's weird about it, and I'm probably giving away a future segment, but
sorry.
It's kind of like rattly for the price.
Really?
That thing's $118,000.
No, I want nice fit and finish.
I know,
For that price.
I know, and they don't have any leather or anything because they're like a vegan interior, but it's nice. It's nicely done. But like
it's an odd move for Hummer. I mean, just from a brand perspective.
I know. Well, it's funny because the Ariya does like 3.2 kilowatts per hour, right?
Yeah. It's arguably using more fossil fuels than...
well, I told GM when the Hummer came out, I go, you're going to have the exact same problem you did with the other one. This is going to be gas guzzling, this is going to be electron guzzling, right?
But it's just going to be guzzling gas somewhere else.
Oh, it's funny. So like the Rivian, I think I've gotten like 2.12, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the F-150, I'd have to look at my notes, somewhere north of 2. I was barely getting like 1.3, 1.4 on this thing. And so if you guys think about it, there's no real good way to quantify kilowatt hours into miles per gallon. The easiest way to get close is just add a 0 on the end. It'd be like, if you're at 1 kilowatt, that's like an equivalent to a 10 mile per gallon vehicle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like, if the Ariya is doing 3.45, that's 34, 35 mile per gallon equivalent. Ish. It's really a sliding scale, so it's actually worse on one end and a little bit better on the other.
Yeah.
But it guzzles. But it is so stinking fast. Like you go to pass a semi on the freeway or something, and it's got torque steer and yanks you along the way.
That's wild.
I mean, it's crazy.
The fact that you drove it all the way out to Johnson Valley and back, though,
Yeah.
tells me that you had some level of. I mean, that was my fear with the kind of economy that they get.
Yeah.
Is that the range would knock so many people out of contention.
Yeah, well, and then now there's fast chargers out there. So I looked.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go out there, and if I need to do 20 minutes, so it'll do on a fast charger, the GM. I think it's 350 kilowatt hour fast charger. So like 20 minutes is like 100 miles, or maybe a little bit less, and maybe a little bit less on time for that. And the problem is you don't always know what the charger is going to give you because also a lot of them have one, it's not really a gen set unless you're remote, but whatever the unit is that pulls in. If you have a four station charger and 4 people are there, you're not going to get 350 out of all 4.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so it depends on the setup, and there's all sorts of weird how can I explain it? Just different generations of chargers. And so you'll see an old one that's small and it's like 50 kilowatts next to a giant 350 that's got like lights on it and stuff.
Yeah.
And the screen's way better. And you're like, all right, well, and so people don't know what their cars can charge at. It's like the RE8s can't charge at a 350. So I never take up a 350. Meanwhile, I go to charge, the Hummer needs a 350 because the battery's like, a gazillion, kilowatt hours. And some dude's in a little car like plugged in the 350, but not the 50 next to him or something. It's just, people have to learn, and it's
the
not,
diesel pump battle all over
yeah, it's not a great experience still. I'm happy that I'm in a position where I get to drive them and experience it, but it's not unless you could charge at home and you've got solar, so you're basically making free power, the experience still sucks.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, but tell me more. I want to know more about, you don't have to tell us about Toyota,
Totally veer off.
but we're going to go all over the place.
So actually, I can say a little bit on Toyota.
Okay.
So that is, right now we're looking at the non-hybrid Tacoma and 4Runner will be the earliest launches in the line.
Which are the Turbo 4s.
And we are looking at, right now, at a bare minimum, it's going to be tuning and intakes.
Okay.
And, specific finishes on the intakes and all that is a different conversation. We're really well known for our carbon fiber products, real hand-laid carbon fiber products.
Not like, what is it, the water film, like where you just dip it?
Hydro dipping.
Yeah. You're like, oh, look at that sweet carp. Oh,
Yeah.
no, that's not.
Your gun parts and your truck intake. So
How dare you?
So the carbon fiber finishes may or may not come to pass. That's right now a big thing I'm working on, is just communicating with the Toyota market, with the people that actually have these trucks or have historically owned something like this truck, to figure out what products people are really excited about. So we're seeing a lot of demand for body armor components, for, sliders and skids and and all of that. And that obviously makes sense to me. I'm not sure that it makes the most sense for Cobb to be there. That's something we'll have to kind of play with. Past that, we're looking towards the LX and the GX, the Tundra, and moving into the Twin 6, and then also the hybrids would follow that.
Well, and I think with the GX is kind of the sweet spot because you're not forced into the hybrid because you get the Twin Turbo 6.
Yep.
And you also, I think it's more of a traditional experience.
Yep.
And people are, with the Overtrail now, people want to take those overlanding. They want to be the first people. They're like, oh, I've got the new GX.
Yeah.
And I think it's, even though it's the exact same vehicle as the Land Cruiser, I think it looks better. I think the interior's nicer.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the Twin Turbo 6. I'm so mad at Toyota's strategy of having like every vehicle's on the same platform and they're just shaped differently. Like they all have the exact same wheelbase. They're all 112 and a half or whatever, right? Like
if you're a Land Cruiser guy, like those guys are still, they're mad. They're unwell.
Yeah.
They'll come back from it, I hope.
Well, and you get a new 250 Land Cruiser and you're just like, yay.
Yeah.
But the GX, I feel like they did a good job of carving out their little area. And I thought so, like,
I think they're a pretty like mean looking little truck.
No, too. They are. And you can get a third row. To me it's like the successor to like an 80 series Land Cruiser, because it's about the right size and get the third row. The thing about the Land Cruiser forcing you into the hybrid is the battery goes where the third row goes. So if you're an 80 series person, you're like, I want that size of vehicle with 3 rows. You got to go to the Lexus because they don't even offer it.
Yeah, I hear you,
it's
but also you don't want that third row seat anyway.
Yeah, probably not. Well, I'm not sitting back there, but I get throw some kids or a dog back there. But it's weird. It's like, okay, so you have the 4Runner and it's swoopy, but it has basically the same engine, and you can get the non-turbo. And then you have the Land Cruiser, which is boxy, better, arguably better interior if you like something a little bit more upscale and traditional than the kind of boy racer that's in the Tacoma 4Runner. T-O-Y-O-T-A, right? Like, it's like, whoa,
I gotta say, though, the finish I'm in the tier, there's too many TRD
I know,
levels now.
Sport or off-road?
Off-road
is
the hybrid one, I think. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. That's ridiculous that I don't know that, but
we're
they've added
learning.
so many
I know.
TRD tiers.
They have, I think, 11 trims now or 10 trims. Like, it's
there's
crazy.
so many. And if you start looking across from Tacoma / 4Runner to the Lexus variant, and there's so many.
Yeah.
But the trim in that, as I told you earlier, I'm on my second Toyota rental today.
Yeah, do you want to tell that story?
I don't know. I mean,
it's not a Toyota problem. It's just a problem when they forget to put the oil cap back on and give it to a customer.
Yeah, I picked up a rental today from Toyota, and the dealer did not put the oil cap back on the motor. I'm sorry, the engine, and created a little bit of drama for me in the middle of the day.
Yeah, that's
But that's all right.
sad.
I don't
sad
know.
trombone.
All's well that ends well, and I got a
Did you get upgraded?
much nicer
Yeah.
truck. in the end. So it had way fewer miles and a much nicer interior. So
Well, that's good. Yeah,
I've been pleasantly surprised by that because I drive a 17 Tundra every day.
Oh, big upgrade on versus
the
materials from
interior,
that. Yeah,
and like that was that is a TRD Pro interior, and there's still, no comparison at all.
Yeah, the new stuff is nice in that regard. I just find it weird. Like, you got, okay, so you got the 4Runner, and you've got turbo, and you've got non-turbo, and then you've got, you got turbo and turbo hybrid, and then you go into the Land Cruiser, and you only have turbo hybrid. You can't get the V6, and then you can step up to the Lexus and you get the V6, but no hybrid, and you can get a third row, which you can't get in either of the Toyotas because you have to step up to a Sequoia, which is still on the same platform as the big LX, but the big LX is way more expensive. They don't have. I think Land Cruiser, the real one, the 300 series, is coming back to the U.S. I keep hearing about it. It's so weird. It's like you just go to the Toyota dealership and you're like, I don't know,
Right.
Yeah,
it is a lot of variations on the same two ideas.
Yeah. Why can't you have to me, it would be a Land Cruiser turbo V6, maybe detuned from the Lexus, so that Cobb tuning can come in and give you Lexus Plus numbers. And
open
you
up
get
those
the
HO numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's certainly an option. I mean, the tuning possibilities that you can make on a stock motor when you're talking about, especially like a 6-cylinder twin turbo, with factory turbos, I'm talking stock. The numbers that you can put up on those are truly impressive. They are so heavily detuned from the OE.
What's the reason? Is it thermal management? Is it intercooler capacity? Is it just reliability?
Yeah. So I think that there's a few factors there. One, if you're getting into that level of tuning, you have the emissions component, right?
Sure.
So we are jumping through the hoops to actually make that all happen.
Yep.
I think that part of it is marketing, right? They quite literally sell HO variants on their vehicles. So if you want a high output version of the same motor, all that means is that one is tuned for more power.
Right. And you paid more.
Right. And then you also have, and I don't know that this should be a talking point, but you're talking about safety standards and things like that. You add more power. When you're adding power, you're changing the dynamics of safety testing, and then that could be a factor.
Sure.
There's a ton of reasons why they would do it. Marketing is my favorite point of those, I think.
Yeah. Says the marketer.
Yeah, right. Hey, listen. Yeah, I just hate them because I ain't them. The other point, I'm going to jump way back.
Yeah.
We were talking about new products and Tacoma, and all the Toyota stuff is new, and not just Toyota, but Lexus as well. The flex fuel kits that we're getting ready to launch in the Ford world. So we went through, kind of a chaotic time in 22, and we pulled a bunch of flex fuel kits off of the market, not in the truck world, all in the Subaru stuff. There was a bit of an uproar. We've mostly appeased those people, but
mostly
when the EPA comes calling, what do you do?
Yeah.
And so we have gone back in and kind of reworked the flex fuel program, and we're using the CAN bus system to be able to access the ECU and do some really innovative ways of tuning around that. So flex fuel kits coming out soon for the Gen 2 Raptor, and then ideally right after that we're moving on to Gen 3.
So is that E85?
Yeah. So the cool thing about flex fuel, other than, how we're getting into that system, which is like this weird, I call it the hockey puck. It's not a hockey puck. It is very much a sensor gateway, but it is essentially a device where you are feeding sensor inputs in, and that gateway is translating them and kicking them out to the ECU so that it knows what to do with that information. One of the tricky emissions hoops that we essentially had to jump through is that you can't remove any factory sensor data that's going into the ECU. And a lot of flex fuel kits in the past, ours included, were relying on other gauge lines and other, whatever, vacuum lines, whatever. And we have kind of found a new way around that by going in through the CAN system. We have been using that in the GTR since 2016, I want to say. Might have been later than that.
Godzilla.
Yeah. And then launched it for a whole bunch of Subarus last year. So the Raptor, the second gen Raptor, is going to be the first rollout on the truck side.
Now, do you have to change like stainless steel lines or any of that kind of stuff for the E85?
No. So it's largely factory components. We're adding in a handful of hardware bits that vary depending on make and model. And the cool thing I think people don't think about with flex fuel, because like theoretically I could have been tuning any truck on E85 up to this, well, any, right? Like based on those same hardware constraints, whether that's injectors or lines or whatever. But E85 is such a wildly volatile fuel, and it is constantly degraded. And what you get at one gas station is not the same.
Because typically you would have, let's say it's 98 to 104, 5 octane, something like that. But you just don't know how long it's been sitting. And if you're not in an area where E85 is turned over a lot, and I love the performance of E85, but I find the science behind it is hard because it takes a lot of energy to make.
Yeah.
And I don't love the idea of pulling out of a food supply to make fuel.
Right.
And then it just shelf stable is not. It's like number
the shelf
one
stability
thing.
is not there. But if you're using it for racing, or you're using it because it's freaking cheap and you're not, doing enough with it to worry about the fuel economy there, the ability to pump in whatever is actually at that pump and get your truck to run properly in light of that is pretty invaluable. And then obviously the other side of that is the flex fuel that was always marketed by the OEs is then you can put in 91 or 87, whatever octane you're using. But you don't have to switch tunes when you do that. So we're including the ethanol sensor that's going to allow it all to function. That same kind of sensor that GM went wild with.
So it really is a full kit.
Yeah.
It's not just like, virtual, whatever gets loaded in. There's actually some hard parts that you guys include.
Yeah. We're including a bunch of hard parts that hockey puck CAN gateway included that feeds all the data back. And it is a really innovative way to get there. And we are confident that there is a CARB EO in the future for that.
I can't imagine that they would go, you're burning a renewable fuel and you can make it, because you can burn ethanol's pretty clean.
Yeah.
You burn it cleaner, but no EO for you because of, some technicality, right?
Yeah.
There needs to be, I think in the world of emissions testing approvals or EOs or any of that stuff, I really feel like we don't have enough common sense. I feel like technicalities get you down a bad road. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Is the goal here for the vehicle to put out less emissions? And if it's more efficient and makes more power, isn't that a good thing? Oh, well, this clip was moved over here, so we can't allow it. And you're like, what?
Right. And so part of the problem right now with flex fuel or with E85, anything testing that's happening, at least in the state of California right now, is that CARB doesn't really have a rule book for that yet. So when we go in and we test hard parts or we test standard calibrations, they know, follow the flow chart and here's the thing, and it passes and we're good. There is no process like that currently for alternative fuels. You get into these like wildly expensive OE style test cases.
Got it.
And neither Cobb Tuning nor anyone that I'm aware of in the aftermarket is willing to spend $500,000 on that this year, right?
Well, because you probably end up subsidizing whoever comes behind you too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because if you're going to spend that money to CARB, it's not going to sit in their bank account. They're going to go spend it on testing equipment.
That's right.
And you're bankrolling your competitor to come in after you open the door and probably do the same thing, right?
I mean, so the wild thing about tuning is that there are a handful of companies in the space that we are in, all kind of serving our own niche,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of us have worked together at this company or that company or whatever. A lot of us are friends, and there is a collaborative environment in the tuning space.
Do you guys have like the tuners hiding from the EPA Signal app or something like that going on?
Yeah, we have a
The
Facebook group.
Secret Society?
Yeah, the EPA Shed Insiders group.
Good callback. Thank you.
So we are working, there's kind of this like collaborative group that's working to figure out how to get through certain challenges, right? Because even if we want E85 for Raptor and HP Tuners wants it for a Camaro and SCT wants it for whatever, right? Like there's a use case where we can all help each other to win in this, and it is such a cost prohibitive process otherwise that things get a little wild, right? And ultimately, we may make jokes, but we all want to find the right ways to get through the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the wild things about the carb processes is that we have been, I mentioned that we've got over 200 EOs. So we have such a close working relationship that a lot of times they're asking for kind of extra analysis from our engineers on like, explain this to us. Why does this make sense? Why does this work?
So here's something I have a question about,
Sure.
because there's a lot of cars that don't pass emissions stock.
Yeah.
So I would imagine the car probably sees your testing and goes, so your testing is cleaner than baseline. How'd you do that? Because we tested that. We know it doesn't pass stock. And there's, whether it's diesel or a few direct injected gas engines out there.
You don't have to come for Volkswagen like that.
I mean, I'm just not mentioning names, but yeah. So I would imagine that's probably a curiosity to them if you're seeing similar data as or validating each other's data.
Right. So one of the things that's interesting about the OE emissions testing, so they have these long spans that they have to run their vehicles over. It's 100,000+ miles, and that's that expensive testing we're talking about. They still only have to exist within a range, and one of the things that it's not exactly applicable, but talk about lean is mean, right? So you're not burning off raw fuel through your exhaust, or not. You got me.
Releasing it.
Yeah, you're not releasing unburned fuel. You're cleaning up those things, especially when you're talking about alternative fuels and E85. You're cleaning up those things. There's plenty of opportunities where they could still be within range, especially on a brand new vehicle. But if there's anything that we know, it's that we can't predict what individual vehicles under individual circumstances are going to do over an extended period of time. We can't predict what, you're talking about crappy octane boosters burning out cats, right?
Oops.
You can't predict that at least as the EPA or CARB, but you can get that initial launch and that initial testing done within a run to where they believe in good faith that this vehicle is going to meet the demand that it's supposed to. Can we clean that up? Often.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we can go cleaner than OE very often. I mean, that's just a part of making power and cleaning up your...
Yeah, because it's more efficient.
Yeah. You're cleaning up your air fuel, and in the process, cars are slightly less toxic.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can have power and, less emissions, like, why not?
Right. And I mean, that's kind of the ethos that we've been working from since dealing with the EPA from, the very beginning of that process. Anybody who's in
Do you think that made Cobb a better company?
I do. Yeah. I mean, we are so much more advanced in the way that we are dealing with the emissions and the testing, and truly, I think it's true in the import stuff, but when it comes to the truck stuff, you're talking about people that are outdoor enthusiasts already, right? We may not agree on politics at every moment. We may not agree on all these things, but none of us want to, drink toxic water or chew the air in the mountains.
What did Ronald Reagan say? If you're 80%, if you agree with me 80% of the time, you're not my enemy, or something like that, right? Yeah.
And that, like, no matter how aggressively you want to drive your truck, doesn't mean you want your kids to choke on the air they breathe.
Of course.
So yes, I do think that like those emission standards are making us better.
There were a lot of videos of blasting grandma with a bunch of soot at a
Pole
bus
rollers.
stop. Like that's not not where we're at in this world. Like that's not cool.
Some would argue that it's their fault that we're all in this position.
Well, and I don't know that I would argue against that point. I think it's probably a fair point.
No.
One of the vehicles that just came out that I was really impressed with, that I just drove, and it seems like it would be up your alley. I don't know if you're going that route.
I don't know. I'm scared.
New Ram Straight 6 twin turbo?
You're not the only one asking.
Okay.
Yeah. I got a request a couple of weeks ago for the RHO. And then, so I'm aware of it. It would be a new adventure for us to start playing in the, I'm not supposed to call it Mopar anymore, sandbox. But it's on my radar for sure. We've not historically played there. Doesn't mean it's off the table.
But I mean, you look at like 2JZs and stuff, and you look at the size, you're going, and it's healthy.
Yeah.
I drove the standard output, not even the high output. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't tell if it was the high output or not. It was that good.
Huh.
Like, I had driven the high output in a Grand Wagoneer, but I hadn't driven a standard output. I did in a Rebel X, and I drove it. I was like, I don't miss the V8.
Yeah.
I missed the sound. I missed the rumble. But the truck was freakishly
YouTube
smooth.
Says there's an exhaust that'll fix that right up for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's every EcoBoost exhaust. Someone's like, it just adds the rumble right back in.
I was on the 3rd generation, whatever the new one is. Mm-hmm. EcoBoost, so V6 Raptor drive, and we went out to Dumont Dunes, and it was a full media program. I think there was 60 trucks.
Yeah. That's a lot of trucks and not a lot of dunes, by the way.
4 in the morning. It sounded like angry bees going down the highway. I mean, it was ridiculous.
In the silence of the desert where it's just echoing back off the hills.
Yes, and I rolled down my window and I'm like, this is so silly. Like, I should have recorded it.
Yeah. It's content gold right there.
I'm telling you. All right, so we are going to chalk up to the Truck Show podcast. Has given you the idea to make lots of money off Ram trucks. You guys are welcome.
Step 2?
Step 2, yeah. No, step 3 profit. Step 2 is... So what are some of the other product lineups that you offer right now? Obviously, we talked about there's tunes. And we talked about some of the things you guys are looking at that could be some of the hard parts.
Yeah.
Intakes. If I'm a truck guy, what am I going to your website to search for?
Frequently, you're going to my website to search for tuning and intercoolers. So intercoolers are a huge, huge market for us. We've got them available for most of the truck stuff in 2 different sizes. So that is one that's going to fit totally stock. The second one is if you're either feeling crafty with a hacksaw or if you've got a frame cut bumper, we could put a whole lot more intercooler in those trucks.
Full metal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So no like intercooler plastic caps blowing off or anything like that?
Caps. Okay. No plastic caps. We're working on trying to figure out the Tacoma one as we speak.
Yeah.
That would be such a killer addition on that truck. So on our website, everything is ranked with wrenches. It's like how many wrenches this install is.
Is the Tacoma one like 14 or something like that?
On a scale of 1 to 5 wrenches, it's at least 12 wrenches. And
there's a lot of wrenches.
There's a lot of wrenches. So we're trying to figure out a way to get around the current install there. So the intercoolers are huge for us. A lot of people are purchasing exhaust stuff, especially on the truck side. The thing I will say, and this is like always my kind of fair warning to someone who's looking at us for exhaust.
Yeah.
We're not going to get loud and rowdy for you. It's going to sound good. It's going to sound a nice, clean, but it's not going to drone and it's not going to be obnoxious. And
I'm okay with that.
And as previously discussed, small displacement turbo motors. If you're looking for a rumble, you probably need a different truck.
Yeah.
But,
You're not wrong.
No.
You're not wrong at all.
I minimize returns.
Good point. There's a couple, I'll say, 392 exhausts that are out there. And it's funny because I will hang around the 392 groups on Facebook, and this one company always comes up, and it's like, hey, do I do A or B? And then they're like, oh, dude, super sick, aggressive, I did B. And then they're like, yeah, I can't stand it. Like my wife got in the car, and she's like, what did you do to it? And it's like, that's not...
Yeah.
If you're all happy, you got a really nice exhaust, last thing you want is your wife to hop in and be like, did you ruin your car? Because that's not good.
I know, we're such nags. But I also know that that's something that, like, as I have grown into my automotive fixation, that the exhaust that I have on my Mustang, which I mentioned finally running after 8 years.
Lucky you. What's that like, by the way?
Yeah, I hate it. I want to get rid of that car so bad. And I got into that car the other day and cranked it up, and I was like, oh, that's what the exhaust sounds like? That's terrible. Like, because it's loud. It sure is
well,
loud,
in our youth, I mean, you take, decade old of us, and we're like all about it. Now we're like respectable, like upstanding citizens. We're like, ooh, how dare you have such a loud exhaust on the road, sir? You know?
My.
Yeah, my, it is annoying.
Our Lexuses, our Lexi, as I call them.
I was going to say Lexi.
Yeah, as we, off-road our Lexi. And nice Jeep peasant, the people. And I'm sorry. I didn't.
That's right. Well, you got to go on the what's a herd of Lexi?
Oh, God.
Because I've seen all the Lexi on a trip before, and I'm like, it's a lot of Lexi.
Yeah, the GX kids roll deep.
You know, what's funny because it's like people are like, dude, you Toyota guy? Like, no, Lexus. And you're like, well, excuse me.
Oh, okay. So where'd you come up with the idea for that LRD logo that you draped down the side of the truck?
Dude, this is like totally Lexus racing development. I saw a guy
that's not a thing.
He had the 3 Toyota hash, everybody does the red, yellow, orange.
Yeah.
His was gray, darker gray, and charcoal. And it was like on the Lexus grill, and it had like Lexus stickers. I'm like, dude, stop putting stickers on your freaking GX. Like that's not a sticker car.
Not the move.
Boy racer.
Yeah, I mean they're such cool trucks though. We had one for a long time.
My good friend David Hamilton, he had a bunch of issues with his EcoDiesel Jeep and got tired of dealing with it, and he bought I think it was the last year of a 460. Mm-hmm. And it's like I love them, but the last year of a 460, the tech and everything is so old on it, and the screen. Was it the
470 or the 460?
I think wasn't the 470 was the early one, and the 460 was the later one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was whatever the last one before the changeover. To the new one.
Gotcha.
And I'm just like, I love it. Like the seats are nice. It's comfortable. It's all Toyota in the right way, but it's just like also really kind of dated on the inside.
Yeah. I was passenger princess in the GX, and I told my husband we either needed to put different seats in it or something, because the seats were so soft that if we were out wheeling all day, I would spend all day
just like bottom out on them,
shoving myself back up. Like I would wind up
you slide out. Yeah.
So I told him if he didn't fix it, I was gonna screw a block.
That's it. I'm out.
No, I was gonna put a block in the footwell so I could
that
brace myself
like a race truck.
Yeah. So I mean, I love those trucks too. But
this is how. My obsession with those goes way back, because I think it was 2003 or 4, and again in like 5 or 6, or 4 and 5 and 6, Four Wheeler Magazine chose it as our SUV of the year.
Really?
And it was back to back. Like, that's the beginning of my automotive career, and that thing just changed over last year, right? You know,
so it's formative. It's a core memory vehicle.
Yeah, totally. So it's just one of those things that it's like, oh man, that thing's been with me as long as I've been around. It's like, so. I was ready for something new. I do really like the new one.
Yeah, I think I
so
like the aggressive. I love that we have quit as an industry producing every vehicle that looks like a weird sloppy droopy bubble.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, it's so. Now they're weird sloppy droopy bubbles that somebody carved like a line down the side. They're like, oh, it's totally different.
I don't think so. So I think we are getting way more aggressive.
Good.
We're getting way more aggressive.
Except for the undercut so all of the cars, and this is what sucks, is everybody's like, wow, the fronts all look the same, like they're really flat and they're high, and sometimes the bumper juts out like a underbite or underbite, yeah. But that's for pedestrian standards. So like all these regulations are like ruining car design. You know?
Well, I think that's like the joy of American vehicles, right? Like we can get away with a lot larger and wilder vehicles. Than
like you can't have a Cybertruck in Europe. Like, they're like, sharp edges? Hell no.
Absolutely not.
Get that freaking Ginsu 2000 out of here, you know?
Right. But because we can have taller vehicles, because we can have wider vehicles, we get away with a lot more.
Yeah.
But then also, pedestrian, the front end on the vehicles, this made me think about it. Have you noticed the air dam on the front of the new Toyotas?
Yeah. They look like locomotive. It's so bad.
I am petitioning so hard for that to be something that we support some solution for it, but it feels like it has to have just been designed for standards. As
long as they design it to completely rip off when you go off road, right?
Whether it's designed for that or not, it's going to happen. That thing, you have removed so much ground clearance at the front of that truck.
The Toyotas are really bad, and like the Ford Super Duties are really bad also.
Interesting. I haven't noticed that.
Oh yeah, they're like, it's like a 6-inch air dam on it.
I think that the reason that I haven't noticed them is because I think people are taking them off before they ever drive out of their driveway for the first time.
It's the opposite of the guys that are in the like Hellcats and Chargers who leave the little yellow thing, like
yellow tabs.
It's like, dude, I'm gonna totally leave these on forever.
Yeah, in Memphis they're selling those on Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, you can buy.
In case yours got faded because they were out for so long.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
That's stupid.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about Rebel Rally.
Sure.
So you've done it before.
Twice.
Are you doing it again?
Yes.
And
God
this is
willing.
the 10th year.
Yeah, this is the
That's a
10th
big
year
deal.
of the rally. 10th year of the rally. They've made some new Super Secret Squirrel announcements. If you you must have interviewed Emily on here.
Yeah, so Emily and I go way back. So she was really
You
tight with
mentioned
Rod
Hummer
Hall.
stuff, and I was going to ask.
Yeah.
about that.
So her and I used to hang out on the side of the race course and stuff. And she is one of the best ladies in the industry, bar none.
She's an incredible human.
Yeah.
I want to take this moment to
Yeah.
tell her that I am sorry for not returning her phone call today. Yeah, going into the 10th year, more Super Secret Squirrel stuff than supposedly ever before. It's terrifying for those of us that have competed in this event.
It'd make it exciting.
Yeah. Have you had the opportunity to go out there?
Yeah. And I've been out there. I always say like I would love to volunteer because I love the idea of it, and I'm just always busy.
Go
and
work a checkpoint.
I've thought about it. The last 2 years or 3 years, 2 years, they were out there at the exact same time we had Four Wheelers Overland Adventure before that whole deal ended. So the BLM's like, oh, I don't know about your permit because Rebel Rally's out there at the same time. I'm
You're
like,
"Duh!"
where? And I'm like, no, we're passing each other, And so,
Foiled
they're
again.
like, oh, we don't want you on the same track. I'm like, no, it's good. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I usually run into Emily, a couple times a year, but I do need to give her a call because I should have her on the podcast because she's so freaking awesome.
Yeah. And she's a wealth of information, and she is just one of the nicest people in the industry.
Yeah, she's just solid.
Yeah. So she's also a maniac, and I think she's a devil woman.
Well, when she is a taskmaster,
Yeah.
and when she's in like that mode,
Well,
dude, look out.
Taskmaster is one thing, right? So that's like for the training. When you get into the actual Rebel Rally event, right, and you're like cut off from society, and you feel like you might lose it, then she's like, "What if I ruined your day a new way?" And you're like, "What do you mean?
I can't even worry about that thing now.
Right. I have a map with no lines and no scale and no reliable markings on it, and I'm supposed to use this to find somewhere." It's just like it just like scurries away.
You ever wonder if she like pops up behind a bush just to laugh at you?
I have no doubt that she does, and if that's not enough, she has photographers and videographers on
Oh my
course,
gosh,
just like
that's awesome.
feeding the info back. Yeah. So she's up to no good as usual. And I am looking forward to it. We have not
Sure you are. If you
decided-
sound like I hear it in your voice.
No, so I actually, through no sort of team breakup, I am not competing with my former teammate. So the last 2 years, I rallied, not raced, with Serena Pruitt of SDHQ. And she's been an incredible teammate and bringing incredible vehicles to the party. However, she's decided she needs to travel more this year. So I have teamed up with Amanda Walden.
Okay.
So she has typically run a Bronco. We are undecided between vehicles at the moment on what we'll be driving.
I've got a lot of friends right now. They're like, "Hey, I've got a choice between these things. What should I choose?
I have this incredible choice or that incrable choice.
I've got the OE one or the aftermarket company fully outfitted. You know, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So she
By the way, this is the time of
drives.
year that I get the most call from my industry lady friends.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all like,
So who do you know?
yeah. And I'm like, I can't tell. What help you with the vehicle? I can't tell you anything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the crazy thing is the amount of OE participation that's happening in that event.
Isn't it amazing?
I mean, there really are so many teams that are out there actively.
Jeep has been doing it for a long time.
Yep.
Rivian. Then there's some like aftermarket companies that are tied with the OEs. I know AEV is doing something this year.
Yeah.
Nissan's done stuff. Honda. Bentley even did it when you were with Emmy and like, all sorts of crazy stuff.
So BMW has been a long time participant. I mean, Porsche has done it for sure. There was another big. It might have been the Bentley.
Oh yeah,
I'm thinking of.
Bentiaga.
Yeah. I don't speak luxury vehicles. They make fun of me at Cobb because they start rambling off Porsche codes, and I'm like, I don't.
You're like, I'm
know.
out.
It's
I'm out.
this is too much for me.
Yeah.
Simple truck brain, gotta go. So that has been, a wild experience to watch. I mean, have you dealt at all with Rebecca Donaghy?
I know her in passing.
Yeah.
I don't know her directly, but I do know her a little bit.
She's also a tiny little monster, and she.
I wasn't going to say that though.
She piloted the tiny crossover BMW.
Oh, X3, 2, 1, X1, 1.
Yeah, we were gonna get there. See,
Yeah.
letters and numbers.
No, we just gonna throw them out until something sticks to the wall here.
they rallied that, right? And that to me looks like a car that is not meant for it.
Off-roading,
right?
yeah, and you're like, it's an SUV, but it's
Yeah.
not exactly like it doesn't have low range, and it doesn't
Yeah.
have. I'm like, I want like a Wrangler or
so-
a Ineos or a 4Runner
Yeah.
or
And I've lived in the lap of luxury where the 4x4 class at Rebel,
yeah.
you have so much advantage in just having so much more vehicle. You have so much more tire underneath you. You have so much more ground clearance
To me, that's
underneath you.
that's the jam.
Yeah, right. And you're like, well, that's fine. We can just knock it out because as soon as we come down off this hill, like I've looked at my teammate over and over again. I've been like, all right, time to haul the mail. Let's go. Like we got to get to the next one.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
about to get cut off. So the people that are running that event in the X Cross class, I mean, they are champions because they are not only doing that whole event, just like all of us are in, the last 2 years I was in a Bronco Raptor. They're doing that in a Subaru Outback.
They
Or
are
they're
the
doing it
Class
in-
10 Volkswagen Beetle people of Rebel. Or 11, sorry. Boo me. I should boo myself on here. But.
They get after it. And like they have so much support from the aftermarket and all of that. But I give them so much credit for the amount of skill that it takes to do what they do. But the event, regardless of class, is designed to be done in stock vehicles.
Yeah.
And that makes it really interesting and unique because you could theoretically, and a lot of people do, drive totally stock form vehicles and go complete that event. And it's wild.
Hey, great. Good for you. I still like to have a little...
Yeah.
I like to have some mods with me.
Listen, if I got to read a map while I'm wearing a helmet and pointing my head down at my own lap so that I can read that map, and I'm going to be bouncing down the road, I'd like to bounce a little bit less.
Yeah.
Like just for my neck muscles.
Well, just in general, I can't... Stock is hard for me.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I was a kid, my mom used to say, you're like a cat. You have to piss on every vehicle you own. I'm like, well,
Yeah. Fair.
still to this day, it's true.
Fair.
It's true.
Yep. Oh, I almost left out, speaking of every vehicle.
Yeah.
The wheels. We just launched wheels.
Cobb tuning wheels.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cobb tuning wheels. So we've had collaborations on wheels historically, but
Okay.
we launched a new line of flow-formed
Oh,
wheels.
so not just a crappy
No.
cast Chinese wheel.
No, they're not
but nice
junk.
and
They're really nice.
Flow form's a really nice
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. And we've got them available on the F-150 and the Bronco.
Okay.
And,
So Ford offsets.
Yeah. And then the Subaru as well. So we're,
Yeah.
this isn't the Subaru show.
Well, yeah, we've got a few out there.
So
Justin Gore, I'm talking to you.
I've got to do some research here.
I don't think he still has a Subaru, but he did. So I'm just everything Subaru. I just yell at him.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Just listener of ours. We love
Fair
him.
enough. So yeah, that's more on the way. We're
Okay.
in the process of designing more wheels that offer more versatility.
Yeah, you guys are really getting into. I mean, it's from starting from a tuning company, expanding into hard parts, expanding into complete different product category or application categories, and now completely different product categories within those applications.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. And it's
When do you sleep?
never. And if you think that I don't sleep, you should meet our calibrations team. Because every hard part that we do, we are accommodating that from the software side.
Oh, okay.
So every new product that we launch is supported by our access port in order to meet all of those emission standards and
Yep.
do all the things, right? And also just to have a functional user experience. If you're going to put a new intake on your truck, you want to make more power with it. Adding an intake and not a tune, you're going to get some functionality, but you're certainly not going to get more power.
Well, especially today, because on some of the trucks, they will cancel out any gains because the computer
Any extra.
learns and goes, oh, wait, let's dial this back because
Yeah.
it's outside the parameter.
So the intakes that we are releasing, launching into the world, they are all going to be on applications where you might see a little bit of a gain where the vehicle has a certain amount of range that it can play with anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
But for the most part, you're going to see cooler air. You're going to see cleaner air. You're
Yep.
going to, whatever,
Air density is going to be better,
yeah,
all
but
that kind of
the
stuff.
power is not inherently going to just
It's not like it was,
happen
again,
for you.
10, 15, 20
yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, it's different. But if we can combine the software and the hardware and make that happen, that's a winning.
Well, then
combo
you
every
could do
time.
it as a modular upgrade too, right? Like somebody might only be able to afford the intake right now.
Yeah.
And then maybe they decide, oh, you know what? I do want the power. I'm going to get the tune now. And
Yeah.
then they already have some of the foundational pieces in place that allows that customer to kind of do it over time and stay with you guys throughout the process of that ownership experience.
One of the kind of more unique things about Cobb because to my knowledge, we are the only tuning company that offers as many hard parts as we do, is that we have the power packages. So you can buy, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. I'm sorry, by the way, to anyone else that works in this business, that Cobb Tuning back in 2000 and whatever was like, let's name things by stages, because now
Everybody, yeah.
it has a stage. I've got
I went to an open house for
my truck.
Oh no, seriously, I went to an open house somewhere, and they're like, stage 1 is the base house. Stage 3 has nicer cabinetry. Stage 4, and you're going, this isn't a car.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So that was you guys, huh?
Yes, that was us.
Okay, well,
hey, it's been great talking to you.
That was painful.
that was you guys. Got it.
Yeah. My apologies. But it is working well for us and our customers in that they can tune with a handheld that comes in a box, a single box, well, sometimes a couple of boxes. You got your intercooler and your intake and your exhaust and your tuner and your
Well, that's going to be the most effective
frame.
way to have that power.
Yeah.
You get everything together and you're like, listen, you could piecemeal this, but the sum of the parts are going to be greater, or the sum of the whole is going to be greater than if you just, had one of those parts one at a time.
Yeah, and some of that's a matter of fueling. Like if you don't want to be forced into a certain grade of fuel every time, or whatever. There's ways to deal with that. If you want to start with lower stages and later on you can tack on more parts, you can do it. But the ability not only to do that, but to do it at an additional discount for people that are looking is
if you want to do it now, do it together, right?
Yeah.
If you can afford it, that sounds like the right way to go.
Yeah, that's the win.
All right, so if people want to find out more, they go to cobbtuning.com, and then where are you guys on social?
At Cobb Tuning on all the things.
Oh, see? It's so funny when you get like a younger company where things are taken now, right?
At Cobb _
Yeah, underscore
trucks,
dot dash. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, okay. Nobody's ever going to remember that. So.
Yeah. Easy enough. At Cobb Tuning on all the things.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming. I know we've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah. This has been fun.
Yeah. So good luck on Rebel Rally.
Thank you so much.
Good luck when you go out to the lake bed.
Oh, I need it.
Hey, I already did my my lake bed visit for the year, so
you did your tour?
I'm good. I did my tour.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we will keep in touch with you, and we got to have you back on after Rebel because I want to hear how you do.
Yeah.
I want to do like a Rebel
I'm threatening
episode
you with my journal entries.
Do it.
I think that'd be a
tag
fun
me in all your
segment for OBR.
Instagrams.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, what's she doing today?
Oh,
stories.
You think we get Instagram stories? That's so cute. We don't get.
Oh,
cell
you don't get
phones.
anything. That's right.
Yeah.
You don't get anything.
No, nothing.
You'll just rip a page out and then send it by carrier pigeon, and then we'll just read it on the air.
I told Mark I was gonna scan my handwritten journal entries from every night because it's just me like venting about whatever I'm up.
That could be its own show. I was thinking about doing a Rebel Rally where I probably have 4 or 5 friends who are in it, and then like have each of them on for a segment to talk about like their experience.
Not to bring it back again, but
that's what we do here, by the way. You're good.
It is such an incredibly difficult event, and it is such an incredibly cool event.
Yeah.
And 2 things can be true at the same time. And it just all week long you're thinking my brain is going to melt out of my ears, and at the same time you're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done.
And then somewhere in that process, when you sit down and you realize that you haven't answered your marketing emails for 5 days because you have no cell service.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, when this thing ends, I'm screwed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you can't think about that. No, everybody goes into it thinking that the removal of technology is going to be hard for them. And the second that they take your phones away, they're like, oh, here's 75,000 things you have to worry about for the next 10 days. And you're like, oh.
Oh, I guess I don't have to worry about it. I don't have time.
I forgot I had a job.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, thanks for visiting me in the podcast. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
All right. Well, we'll have to do it again.
Toodles.
Thanks again to Kirstin Backes at Cobb Tuning. Of course, you can go to cobbtuning.com to check out all of the applications that they cover. And in the truck space, more are coming all the time. All right, so it's time to figure out what's in my driveway. I gave you a little bit of a hint at the beginning. This is one of those vehicles that is very controversial. And I had been waiting to get inside of it for a while. In fact, I had gone out to it. It was under development during COVID. I went up to GM's Proving Grounds, and that was the last time I drove it. And to have one at my disposal, in fact, I did some off-roading in it, actually took it out as my vehicle at King of the Hammers, learned a lot about it, but before I tell you what it is, got to play the jingle.
What's in Holman's driveway? What could it be? Is it a Nissan, a Ford, or maybe a GMC? Is that a Chevy, a Jeep, or a Ram that you see? Or maybe a Toyota, a Tesla, a Rivian to drive for free? It must be gas, diesel, or electricity. How'd he get so lucky to get those keys? In Holman's driveway, vehicles just appear. It's always a mystery how they ended up there.
That's right. It's always a mystery to figure out how they ended up there. This week was the Hummer 3X, which is the tri-motor version. This was the SUV. And I spent a lot of time with it. I put hundreds and hundreds of miles on it. Actually took it on a couple of trips. So without further ado, here's a little ride along with Holman in the GMC Hummer EV SUV. Hey, what's up, everybody? So back for another episode of What's in Holman's Driveway. So this week I had the pleasure, mostly, of spending time in kind of a technological tour de force, I would say. This would be the 2025 Hummer EV 3X. So this is the SUV, not the truck. And this one starts at $104,650, but then also has the $9,995 Extreme Off-Road package. So 18-inch wheels, 35s, rocker protection, skid plate, front and rear cameras with the wash. It gets upgraded also to the mud terrain tires. Adds a front locking diff to go with the rear locking diff. This is in a weird color called Tide Metallic, which is like this glacier baby powder blue. It's kind of not my color. I'll be honest. They dropped off at the house. I was like, I don't know if I want to drive that one all week. Anyway, $9,995. So the Tide Metallic is $625, and this has the dual level charging cord, which is $350. So total options on this are $10,970. And this has the biggest destination of anything I've driven in a long time. So total vehicle with options is $115,620. With destination comes out to $117,915, which is not an insignificant amount of money to spend. So they dropped this off. I've had it for a week. I've had a chance to take it off-road. I've put, about, I would say almost 900 miles on this, maybe a little less. Drove it out to King of the Hammers, did a bunch of off-roading in Johnson Valley, spent a lot of time on the highway, and I've got a lot of thoughts on this one. So why don't you go for a ride with me and we'll start talking about it. The biggest thing to talk about is this is the 3X trim. So 3X means it's a triple motor, so 2 in the back, 1 in the front. In the SUV, from what I can gather, this has the 20-cell battery pack. You can get the 24-cell in the pickup truck as the longer wheelbase. And this has 830 horse. I think it's 1,000 in the pickup truck, but it's really hard to tell from their specs. GM's like really fuzzy on that. So let's call it 830 and about 1,000 pound-feet of torque. Range with the 20-module battery pack is 314 miles. And if you were to get the pickup truck and add the bigger battery with the 24 cells, it goes up to a pretty impressive 381. 0 to 60 is just over 3 seconds with the Watch to Freedom mode, so I'll show you guys that in a minute. And the standard one has about 170-ish kilowatt hour battery pack, while the 24 cells 214. This thing weighs over 8,500 pounds. And, I mean, there's a lot to like about it. So let me put this in drive. And I don't know if you can hear it, but we've talked about on the show before how the Hummers have this kind of visceral noise because they wanted you to have feedback, which you wouldn't otherwise have. And so there's always this constant kind of a warble background noise, which is not good for your heart rate. It sort of like takes a while to get used to because it amps you up. But that's nothing compared to putting it in the Watch to Freedom mode, which is completely insane. I mean, it's full-on insanity. So we'll go for a little drive here, and then I'll do a couple rips with Watch to Freedom so I can show that to you guys. Show that off, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So from a styling standpoint, I think they nailed it. I really, really like the way this thing looks. I was a fan of the original Hummers, and the original Hummer was pretty awesome in its day, and I thought they did a really nice job of modernizing the styling It just looks so much more refined, a massive amount of road presence. I have driven a lot of vehicles lately, and this one had the most questions I've had in a while, or looks, and people are like, whoa, what's that big Bronco, right? Because they don't know what it is. GMC doesn't sell a ton of these, but there's a lot to like about it, and there's some kind of stuff I don't want to be too nitpicky. The first thing is, and you can probably hear it, crazy amount of tire noise comes through with the mud terrains. So I don't know if you guys can hear that. But I'm just driving through a big old parking lot right now. We'll do the normal loop and get on the freeway and all that so you can hear it. Other than the tire noise, for $117,000, they made a concerted effort to not make this vehicle I think it's all vegan, no leather or anything like that. So it basically has like nice plastic interior, some metal bits, some nice metallic finished bits. It's got a big screen on it, all the stuff that you would expect. The technology is awesome, but I don't love the rattles. This thing came with 600 miles on it, and you can probably hear it. On the highway, it's not bad. The wind noise and the tire noise are kind of background muted, but driving over bumps and potholes and stuff like that, you can really kind of hear it, jiggle. And it's not, that part about it's not great. Like, it's not that it's loose, but it's just as rattly as like a Jeep Wrangler. I don't think they did themselves any favors with the top design. Let's see here. So we'll come out and we'll get on the freeway, because I really want you guys to hear what this thing sounds like. All right, so coming up to the turn and the roundabout for the freeway. It is freaking fast. It's ridiculously fast, and it has a tremendous amount of torque steer, even though it's all-wheel drive. And you can hear the GM blinkers. All right, we're going to merge here onto the freeway, and you can kind of hear the acceleration. So that's 78 right there, just from rolling from the off-ramp. So, and that's not even the watch the freedom mode. We'll do that in a minute. Some of the things worth talking about: visibility is okay. It's a little bit gun-slitty, but it's got a lot of cameras, big mirrors. It looks really nice. Seating position's cool. You're nice and high. This is really cool because it shows kind of the flexibility of the Ultium platform, which is the GM electric vehicle platform that underpins all of their vehicles. It has a bunch of cameras views on it, all the tech, sensors. This also has Super Cruise, which is really interesting. So there's a LED light embedded into the steering wheel, and you hit the Super Cruise button, and as long as it's on a freeway that it is mapped, it is really great. Like it shows you like green, and then it just steers, and you just kind of hang out and drive. But funny, I was getting on the 15 freeway and no problem until I went south of the 91 freeway. So if you're in SoCal, that's Riverside, and the 15 freeway goes down to San Diego. And it decided that the 15 freeway, which is a major interstate in Southern California, was not mapped. And you're going like, well, how is the 15 not mapped? So I don't really know what the deal is with that, or if it was just having a bad connection day. But anything south into San Diego, I couldn't get Super Cruise to work. Everywhere else that I needed to use it, it was great. The freakiest thing is when you're on Super Cruise, it decides on its own when to make lane changes and stuff based on vehicles in front of you, based on your following distance, based on speed. And so the first few times that happens is super freaky. Like, you grab the wheel and you're like, what is this thing doing? There was a guy that was driving up, and he cut into my lane right as it was in the middle of one of those self-initiated lane changes, and this thing noticed it and yanked back the wheel. And so you still have to stay on top of it. It's not full self-driving. It's basically, if you are cruise control on a highway, you don't have to steer. You can keep your hand off the wheel, put them in your lap, and look around, although it's really aggressive with if it senses your eyes. It's got infrared cameras, and it's tracking your eyes, and if you're not looking where it thinks you need to be looking, it warns you, and then it pulls off, and you got to reset it. So there's that. Okay, here's some of the sounds here and the rattles that are apparent. The middle row and the front row panels come off just like they do in a Jeep, and so that's where I think the majority of the rattles are. There might be some from the tailgate. I'm not really sure. And then just, Jeep fixed this. I don't know why, GM couldn't figure it out, but if it's raining, the way the panels are designed, you open your driver's door and everything just leaks in a big steady stream right onto your leg. So it's kind of how the Wranglers used to be. The new ones have a little rubber piece that divert the water down the A-pillar. This doesn't have that. This also doesn't have a heads-up display, which is something I'm really surprised. It seems like everything does, but I guess that is a function of the angle of the windshield. And so because of the angle of the windshield, you can't really do a heads-up display. So that's just something to note. This thing has air suspension. It's really well tuned. The Ultium platform, especially with the Hummer, is really heavy. This thing weighs, 8,500 pounds or so. And it actually handles really well. Like, it's very stable. It doesn't understeer. I took it on some curvy mountain kind of roads, and it was totally fine and very predictable. Didn't understeer a lot. Fun to drive. Of course, there's a bunch of different modes. So, dynamically, the vehicle is really good. When I took it off-road, it's pretty amazing. It just does everything you want it to do. I took in some really soft, deep sand. It was easy to modulate. It felt really good. I gotta tell you, this is as good or better of any off-road EV out there, for sure. There's a massive giggle factor. One of the things that was kind of interesting, it has a 13-inch display is what the center is. And it does have CarPlay, and GM said, our EVs aren't going to have CarPlay. So when I got it, I was like, oh man, this isn't going to have CarPlay. For some reason, the Hummer does have it. So that was great to have. That was a little bit of a surprise because I didn't think it was going to have that. Throughout the interior, the styling, it's very much like a spaceship. There's a lot of moon-themed things, like the metal speaker grates. The one on the driver's side has a boot print of the astronaut on the moon. There's a bunch of little Easter eggs like that are really cool. Has some wind noise. I think you heard it on the freeway there. But some of the more amazing tech on here, the rear steer works really well. And also the crab walk is super freaky. I picked up my dad and I gave him a drive down his street when doing the crab walk. And it's so weird to drive in 3D. You're basically driving sideways back and forth on the road. A little gimmicky, but I could see in some off-road situations popping yourself out of some ruts, things like that. It also has extract mode, so there's a lot of tech. Rear steer, again, crab walk. That's all cool Hummer games that this thing has that are fun to show off to people because it's so unique in the space. Coming up to a stop sign here. So it's very easy to drive. The tech is awesome. All the modes are really good. It's got torque vectoring. And the adaptive air ride is honestly one of the best air suspension systems I've felt as far as performance goes. I was able to take this thing over a bunch of whoops at fairly moderate speeds. And I was really shocked how well this did with air suspension. Obviously, it can lift it up in off-road mode. It can lower it down. It's got these blow-off valves, so when you park it and you walk away, it goes, which will startle you the first time that you go through it and you deal with that. You're like, whoa, what was that? But you realize it's just purging the air system loudly to essentially lower it down for easier ingress and egress. All the cameras, all the sensors, parking it, the God mode, the overview camera, all that stuff is really good. And basically, it's a great vehicle. I like it. It's got real tow hooks and skid plates. The off-road package is great. It's got rock rails. It's way more capable than I really thought it would be. And I did push it to, a fairly moderate level when I was out in Johnson Valley at KOH, and I took some back roads and stuff. And it was very unstoppable. There was nothing about it that I was like, if I go down here, I'll get stuck. It was very confident, inspiring, and sometimes with the EVs, there's so much power going to the ground, you just spin tires or whatever. This wasn't like that. This was very easy to modulate, and it just felt really good. So some of the drawbacks, other than the creakiness and the the way the roof is designed. Oh, by the way, the roof panels. So when I was in the prototypes back at the GM Proving Grounds in the pickup truck, they were like a tinted clear, and it's using the same like polycarbonate type of material, except they're just black plastic now. And so you can probably hear the echo. So it's kind of boomy in here because there really should be a headliner. There's no light that comes through the roof. It's just shiny plastic. Well, that shiny glossy plastic also is a little bit of a concern just because it reflects all the light in here. So you can see the instrument cluster and all that stuff reflected above your head, which is not super great. Because of the creakiness, you just have that perceived level of quality isn't commensurate with the price. And it's not that the vehicle's not solid, because the vehicle is solid. The doors slam nice, it feels heavy, it feels substantial. But then you go over a bump and you kind of hear things moving around, and it just makes you feel like the car is not as solid as it could be, even though the platform is very solid. It's just, again, it's one of those things that it's a perception issue. And that might bother some people. Again, around town, you hear it more on the freeway and the highway. Off-road, you don't really hear it. There's other noises and stuff going around. The other thing is, I had a huge challenge with EVgo charging stations. So this has a massive battery. I think my Aria is like 64 kilowatt hours, something like that, and this is 178, so it's like 3 times the size. Well, the Aria only charges at like 50 kilowatt hours. This charges up to 350. The problem is, I only found one EVgo station that was a high output 350 that actually worked. There was times I was charging less than the Aria, like at 27. The one station that I found that was charging at like 2 something, high 2s, maybe low 3s, because obviously it stair steps, throughout the state of charge of the battery. That was nice because you could just watch. It's instead of being like 70 miles per hour, it was almost 200 miles an hour of charge. That's great. But if you can't find that station, because no home charger is 350. Most home chargers are 7.2 on a 30 amp or maybe 14.4 on a 60 amp. And you just can't get that fast charging. So if you're charging overnight, great. But if you're actually trying to get somewhere, if a station is broken, you're stuck for a long time because the battery is so massive. And this thing gobbles down electrons like you would not believe. So, for example, my Aria gets about 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour, and that's just me driving it, not trying to hypermile it or anything like that. And that's pretty efficient. I remember the Rivian was about 2, the F-150 Lightning was 2.1 or 1.9, somewhere in there. This thing I could barely crack 1.5. So going from a car that's 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour into a car that is 1.2, 1.3 is like, oh my gosh. Like it just, even though this has the big battery in it and you've got up to 314 miles of range, which I didn't quite get. I was really close to 300. But, again, if you have your climate control on, if you have the radio on, and all that stuff, it obviously sucks range. If you're going 80 miles an hour, it sucks range. So it wasn't great from that standpoint. It's like weird. It's like you have this big battery that's hard to find a charger for, and it sucks down, electrons, and you're like, I should be getting more than 300, but this thing is so inefficient, and it just, big mud terrain tires and a big brick body, and it weighs a lot. That was a big problem because I only got a full charge once. I just got tired of waiting at the EVgo stations. I eventually had to go to a Electrify America station, and that one ended up being okay and giving me the full 350. So that's something to consider. If you are only charging at home, you might be disappointed at how long this thing takes. Not so bad if you drive it every day, you plug in overnight, it's ready for you in the morning. The problem is going to be if you go on a road trip like I did out to Johnson Valley, and then your charger options are limited. That's a problem. So
definitely worth considering. Also, because of not having a great charging experience, it was hard to get enough charge on it where I felt confident taking it somewhere without having to wait. And it sucks because when you go, I'm going to go to a 350 charger, I should be charged in an hour full tilt, and you're going, it's charging at 27 kilowatt. It's not good. So I called EVgo, and there was a problem with that charger. So I went to the next charger, and that would only charge at 50, even though it was a 350. And then I went to 100 watt, and it was charging at like 80, 90. So that was better. But even then, that's not fast enough for how big the battery is. So those are my big beefs with this thing. The lights are really good. The tech is really good. The crab walk, the rear steer, it'll do a circle in the middle of your neighborhood. No problem at all. Like, just no issues. Turn in the middle of a street and you don't have to do a 3-point turn. Great for off-road. It's funny when you watch the rear steer in the opposite direction, because when the rear steer goes in the opposite direction, it looks like the rear wheels are broken, which is, to me, a little bit funny. So anyway, had some issues with charging, but that wasn't enough to wipe the big stupid smile off my face that you get from the Watts to Freedom mode. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because I want you guys to be able to hear. When you hit the Watts to Freedom, that's the mode that charges everything up. It lowers the suspension. It changes everything. This thing absolutely freaking just rips. I mean, it's as fast as a Nissan GTR, where the only noise is the fake noise that it pumps in to let you know what it's doing, and then also tire noise, right? All right, so I'm in this big parking lot away from anything unsafe. So I'm going to hit the button. So the way that you access it, so I'm stopped now, you hit traction control twice. Hopefully you can hear that. And the screen completely changes and a torque monitor comes on. So they say you have 11,500 pound-feet of torque. That's kind of a BS marketing thing. It's really like 900 to 1,000, which again is like, that's not bad, right? Like it's just so much power. Once you do that, it lowers it down, and you have to have your foot on the brake. Once it lowers it down 2 inches and it does all the things it needs to, it lets you know there's a little light in the corner in this cool graphic of the Hummer in your driver information center where it turns red. It has like stripes on it and it looks kind of like military, but listen to this growl. So the best way I can explain it is that this thing is like being on Space Mountain at Disneyland. So if you've ever been on Space Mountain, that's pretty much what it sounds like. It's just this incredible whoop. So you can kind of hear it because I'm in that mode now. So I'm going to drive in this mode for a second, and then we'll go do a Watts to Freedom. So it's on standby now. So that definitely like gets your anxiety up, and it definitely like elevates your senses. I do love the fact that GM said, we understand that we have an EV and there's not a lot of like visceral feedback, and we need to have something to key the driver, where one of the senses that disappears when you have one of these vehicles is the fact that you don't hear the engine. And so they've added this auditory experience. And honestly, I'm not a fan of fake noises. You guys know that. But in this particular application, I don't mind it at all. All right, so I'm going to set up on this long straight here. And we're going to do a quick rip. All right, so once you're stopped, you put your foot on the brake and the gas, and you punch it. And here you go. All right, that's 68 right there. I mean, come on. And the road's a little wet right now because we've got a little bit of a rain storm coming through. Not really rain, I mean, it's just been kind of misting. But you can hear right there like how crazy it is, and just how pumped and amped you get when you get into it. You're like grab your breath. But it's that weird like Nissan, GTR sets you back in your seat. And it's really cool, the fact that they've added this like auditory experience, and it's just very, very neat, the whole experience, because all the screens change, everything around changes, and there you go, hit the button, and now it's quiet again. So if you want it to be rowdy, you can definitely get rowdy with it. If you don't want it to be rowdy, then it's just a really nice electric vehicle, which is super cool. So anyway, that's the Hummer EV. That's what $117,000 will get you. I think if you're an EV enthusiast, I think if you're somebody who loves EV vehicles and you're somebody that wants the latest in technology, there is so much that this vehicle has to offer in that way. It's very, very technology forward, technologically advanced. It's very easy to drive, and the capability off-road's amazing. But the drawbacks are, this is a vehicle that completely highlighted what's wrong right now with basically everything that has to do with EVs, from a charging station standpoint, from a livability standpoint, from going out and trying to search for and find those charging stations that are going to give you 350 kilowatt hours, because they're hard to find. And now that more vehicles have that higher voltage architecture and can take advantage of that 350 kilowatt hour charging, more people are using it. So I saw a ton of people where I would get on the app and I would go, okay, I need to find a 350. Bam, found it. I'm going to drive there. And on the apps, they show you on the app what chargers are being used, what's open. And it would take me maybe 5 or 10 minutes or maybe a little bit more to get there. And by the time I got there, there's a line of cars waiting. And I kept thinking, man, if I'm on a trip somewhere, I'm so bummed out that now I have to wait even more. And that definitely has to be a consideration on this vehicle. So anyway, that is what I've been driving this week. Comfort-wise, family-wise, good cargo area, comfortable seats, plenty of second-row room. It's a big vehicle. It's roomy. The other thing that's kind of cool is I was in a parking structure in the Colorado where the antenna on top was touching, basically that board that tells you, like, don't go any more than this. You can't go any higher. This is pretty low and squatty, and the fact that you can lower it down is pretty cool also. So it doesn't stick up high, even though it has a fairly high ride height. But overall, I mean, it's cool. I'm glad I had a chance to drive it. It's fun. It's the right daily driver for a certain person. And it's the right use case for a certain person. You want to be EV, you want to be brash, you want to have the technology, you want to have the speed, you want to have all the bells and whistles. This checks all those boxes. But as a realistic vehicle, it's just really too inefficient for everyday driving. And I don't know that I would take this necessarily on, let's say, an overlanding trip, because it's definitely capable of it. But the problem is, where are you going to charge out in the middle of nowhere? And when are you going to have a charger that's fast enough to take advantage of the capability of the vehicle? So I'm torn on this one, guys. I'm warming up to EVs. I've been spending more time in it. I get it. But again, this one really highlights like all the drawbacks of EV ownership. And I don't think that can be understated, because you absolutely need to have that charging infrastructure in order to really enjoy the vehicle. So I don't know. This is a one thumb up and one thumb sideways. How about that? It's not quite a full thumbs up. Lots of party tricks, impress your friends, looks cool, in your face, great tech, amazing off-road. But the same thing that makes it awesome, which is the electric drivetrain, is also the thing that makes it where you would probably have to think if you would be able to use this in daily life. It's the same thing that makes makes drawbacks. So that's what's in Holman's driveway this week. And appreciate you guys coming along for a ride. So I don't know what's going to be in the driveway next. I've got a couple ideas, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to surprise you. So thanks for coming along.
I definitely want to know what your feedback is on that one. truckshowpodcast@gmail.com. Again, I know it's controversial. There's a lot of really cool things technologically about it. There's a lot of pain points with it. it is a vehicle of extremes, right? So it's a vehicle that is extremely tech forward, extremely powerful, extremely engaging, but it's also extremely frustrating, and it shows the extremes of EV ownership at this time too. So anyway, hopefully you walked away with a little more information about that. And again, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Speaking of what you guys think, I have been waiting to play the 5-star hotline for a while because we haven't done it. So you guys have been leaving some messages. Let's check in and see what you have to say.
Oh, come on and be part of the show. Call the 5-star hotline. 657-205-6105. It's the 5-star hotline. 5-star hotline.
Sean, it's Rich. Hey, just want to say congrats with the latest episode, the new season 3, episode 1. That was a blast listening to Micro. It was really freaking cool. I know you kind of, you had, let us know in advance a little bit what's coming up, but dude, that was epic. That was an epic start. Proud of you, dude. You got my support 100%. So just let me know if you need anything. You officially get your first set of 5 stars all on your own, and keep monitoring those parameters. All right, dude. Peace out.
Thanks, Rich. I definitely appreciate that. Listen, if you want to be on the 5-star hotline, just give us a call, 657-205-6105. And getting Mike Rowe on the show was it was awesome. I'm glad that I was able to share that experience with you guys. Couldn't have been more gracious and better. I've said it before, but I'm still kind of blown away that he was on our little show here because according to Mike Rowe,
a weird little show,
but
I like it too.
So anyway, no, it was awesome. So thanks, Rich. Appreciate you checking in.
Hey, Sean, it's Dave. Hey, I just want to say great job with that Mike Rowe interview. It was solid, and that Power Wagon looks like a beast of a truck. I just wanted to remind everybody to join us over on the Podshed Insiders Facebook group. It's really cool when you get to share some of that behind-the-scenes stuff that we only get inside the group. So if you guys aren't already part of the organization, please go take a look. We'd love to have you in that private group along with us. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
And that would be Dave Graham, our admin friend, helps us out with social. Just super guy, super fan of the show. And I couldn't do some of the things I do without his help. So I just really appreciate Dave and being a part of this and helping me out because he's great to have. And like he said, if you haven't joined the Truck Show Podcast, Podshed Insiders on Facebook, I'm telling you, you got to do it.
Hey, Holman. Colby here again, calling in. It's been a minute since I've called in, but anyway, we just wanted to jump in on the Kershaw knives thing. I personally have had a handful of Kershaw knives in the past, and I think that people know by now that I'm a first responder. I carry my everyday carry in my, on my duty pants is a Kershaw Barricade. It's a pretty cheap knife. It's like $40, but it has a seatbelt cutter and a glass breaker. And I was the second person on a head-on collision with two young girls. And the vehicle that I went up to, I was the first person there. It was smashed pretty bad. Doors couldn't open. Used that Kershaw to break the window and then cut the airbags out of the car and cut the seatbelt off of her, at least to be able to get her into a position that she could get away from the steering wheel a little bit. And then it obviously had to bring in jaws of life to cut her out because the Kershaw wouldn't quite cut through the roof. But it did a great job allowing me to get in and at least getting her stabilized so we could get her out of there. And it did a really good job. Multiple other officers that I worked with use it. So anybody that's looking for a good everyday carry knife that's not going to break the bank but also does what it's supposed to do, look at that Barricade. Also, hot tip, if you're going to break a window with the back of that knife, make sure you have some gloves on because it goes through a lot easier than you think. So don't end up cutting your hand like I did. But anyway, other than that, keep up the good work, Coleman. Still loving the podcast. Have a good day. Bye. 5 stars.
5-star review! 5 stars! All right, thanks, Colby. You guys may know him as a regular or leaving funny drops from time to time, but that first-person endorsement I did not ask him to do. In fact, I didn't even know he was a user of Kershaw's, but it's awesome to hear it from somebody has to rely on that knife, and to be associated with a company that makes a quality product like that, especially one that's affordable, is even better. So thanks so much, Colby, for leaving that message for us.
Hey, Holman. It's Lars Duick here. I just listened to truck news here. You made a comment about the batteries, a recall on batteries, and you were saying something about batteries used to last longer, and I would agree.
So we were talking about how batteries, not EV batteries, but your general 12-volt starting batteries, that the quality has seemed to go down over time. I remember when I was a kid, 7-10 years, and it seems like now batteries last 2.5, 3, maybe 4 if you're lucky, 5 if you're lucky. They just don't, in my opinion, last as long as they did. So I asked you guys, what do you think? So here's Lars checking in.
Just replaced a battery in our Yukon. Got it about 3 years ago. And I put a new battery in it when we bought it. And we were going on a road trip here at Christmas time. So I was checking a couple things on the vehicle and decided to check the battery, and it tested weak. I think it was 10.7 volts, and it had no trouble starting cold weather that we'd had. But I figured now we're going on a road trip, I better change it. Whatever, it's just part of maintenance, not a big deal. Another battery story, this is a little more frustrating, on my truck. So I got 4 batteries on this thing. They're 1,000 cold cranking amps. They're big batteries. But I think they have a 24-month warranty. The truck was starting hard in the morning. My truck parked outside. This was late fall, early winter. Truck starting hard, and decided I'd check the batteries, and they all tested weak. They were weak. So I go in and get new batteries to the parts store, and they'll give me new batteries. Yeah, I don't have to pay for them right now, but they have to wait till the interstate battery guy tests them with his tester. And okay, yeah, whatever. Let me know. And a couple weeks go by and I get a phone call. They're only going to warranty 1 battery. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They all tested the same. So yeah, the interstate guy tests the battery and lets them know that at the dealership there, and I talked to the parts guy, and he's a nice guy. I've known him for a long time. I said, this doesn't sit well with me, really. Like, I was always under the impression that's the way I would have been taught to do maintenance, to change batteries on my truck. You change all 4 at once when you have multiple. It functions as one unit. And he said, well, I'll get him to test them again. I guess maybe it's fine to replace 1 battery, but that's not what I want to do. A couple weeks go by, and the guy tested them again, and yeah, only 1 is bad. And then a couple days later, I get a text. He says, hang on, he said, I'm going to get them to test them 1 more time. So I don't know how many times they've tested them, 3 or 4 times. So I'm not even sure what's going on yet with these batteries, but anyway, it's just kind of frustrating. Have a good day. Keep up the great show. And the Finnegan, yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, Lars, thanks so much for checking in and telling us all about your battery woes. If you've got battery woes yourself, again, you can leave us a message on the 5-star hotline, 657-205-6105.
5-star.
5-star hotline. Well, guys, that about does it for this episode of the Truck Show podcast. And I'm happy you're here. Spend some more time with me. I'm going to ask you what I always ask you, and that's to follow us on social, at Truck Show Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, at Truck Podcast on X, but we don't use it.
The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show, oh.
And I want to see you on the Podshed Insiders, our private Facebook group where you can hang out with 250 of your closest podcast listening friends. It's been a great experience in there, so we'd love to see more of you in there. Great conversation, and it's helping me with kind of figuring out direction of the show, and there's a few times I've asked questions on what you guys like to see. I got a lot of great answers, so I appreciate all of you for that. Don't forget to send in your events. I'm getting close to start putting them up in a big batch, so hopefully those will be up on the website before the end of the month. And send me Know Your Notes. I'll kind of stockpile those for our next listener episode. And I want your feedback. So truckshowpodcast@gmail.com. What's going on in your life? If you have questions about trucks, what do you like about the show? What guests do you want to see? Whatever. Hit me up, truckshowpodcast@gmail.com. Of course, we've got to thank our sponsors, NissanUSA.com. If If you're looking for a body-on-frame vehicle for your family or your work needs, check out the Frontier, check out the Armada. Great vehicles from our presenting sponsor, Nissan USA. Also, AMSOIL, First and Synthetics, AMSOIL.com. Kershaw Knives, you can get 40% off MSRP. That's Kershaw.KaiUSA.com and OVRMag.com. And you can use the code @TruckShowPodcast and get yourself free access to our library for a year or a discount on a print subscription. And if you want to see what deals we have going on with our friends and partners, head on over to TruckShowPodcast.com under featured products, and everything's listed right there. So check it out, and that'll do it. Thanks again, guys. Saying goodbye for now. But don't worry, I'll be back in just a couple days with the latest in news. So look forward to talking to you then.
The Truck Show Podcast is a production of Truck Famous LLC. This podcast was created by Sean Holman and Jay Tillis, hosted by Sean Holman, and uses production elements by DJ Omar Khan and Jay Tillis. If you like what you've heard, please open your Apple Podcast or Spotify app and leave us a 5-star review. And if you're a fan, there's no better way to support the show than by sharing it and patronizing our sponsors. Some vehicles may have been harmed during the making of this podcast.
All right, you know what they say, why do one more when you can do one too many? So, one more bonus for you guys. Of Watts to Freedom. All right, it's lowering, and here we go. Oh, I mean, it's just silly. Why? It's so fast. It's so big. It doesn't. I mean, the brakes feel good, but they're not like the best brakes. They overheat easily. I mean, when would you ever use it? I mean, other than doing a podcast and hopefully making your listeners giggle. So, anyway, that's the Hummer EV SUV. This is again the 3X tri-motor, and it's just stupid, but also awesome at the same time.